There is a saying among men, put forth long ago, that you cannot judge a mortal's life and know whether it is good or bad until he dies. But well I know, even before I have passed away to Hades' domain, that my life is ill-fortuned and heavy. For I, while still dwelling in the house of my father Aeneas at Pleuron, had such a fear of marriage as never any woman of Iole had. For my suitor was a river god, Achelous, who in 3 shapes was always asking me from my father, coming now as a bull in visible form, now as a serpent, sheeny and coiled, now ox-faced with a human trunk, while from his thick shaded beard wellheads of fountain water sprayed, in the expectation that such a suitor would get me. I was always praying in my misery that I might die before I should ever approach that marriage bed. But at last, to my joy, the glorious son of Zeus and Alcmena came and closed with him in combat and delivered me. The manner of their fighting I cannot clearly recount. I know it not. But if there be anyone who watched that sight without trembling, he might give an account of it. But I, as I sat there, was struck with terror, lest my beauty should win me sorrow in the end. But Zeus, arbiter of contests, accomplished a good ending, if indeed it was good. For since being joined with Heracles as his chosen bride, I nourish one fear after another in my anxiety for him. One night brings distress, and the next night in turn drives it out. Children, furthermore, were born to us, whom at the time he looked at only as the farmer looks at a distant field, visiting it only once to sow seed and once to reap. Such was the manner of his life, ever sending him to and from our home in servitude to some master. But now, when he's risen above all those trials, now it is that my fear is keenest. For ever since he slew the mighty Iphitus, we have been dwelling here in Trachis, refugees in the home of a foreign host. But where Heracles is, no one knows. I know only that he is gone and has caused me sharp pain for him. I am almost sure that he has come to some suffering.
Hello, welcome to Reading Greek Tragedies Online. I'm Joel Christensen with Brandeis University and the Center for Atlantic Studies, here with the help of the Cosmos Society and the Out of Chaos Theater. Today we have a group of actors with us who are from many different time zones. We have our friends in London, someone in Wyoming, New York City. We have as Deianeira, you just heard Mariah Gale. We have Tim Delap, Evvy Miller, Ann Mason, Tony Jayawardena, Martin Lewis. We have help this week with our dramaturgy and scene selection from Emma Paula. Our director and our director of casting is Paula Mahoney, and we have our special expert guest this week, Amy Pistone from Gonzaga University. Now, the play we bring you today is Sophocles' Women of Trachis, or Trachinian Women, depending on which translation you look at. And it's one of Sophocles', let's say, less frequently read plays. If you look it up in Wikipedia, don't necessarily encourage you to do that, it's described as one of his less developed works. And Amy, fortunately, is here today to sort of explain to us what that means. But let me situate the scene for you. A few plays past, we talked about Heracles' first marriage, his wife Megara, and how he went mad and killed their children. This is at the end of his life, right before he actually becomes a god. So this play puts us at a really interesting moment in Heracles' story. It takes us back to another spouse, the later Deianira, and a different child. It introduces the child Hyllus, who'll be played by Martin Lewis, and asks us to think about the relationship that Heracles leaves behind when he goes to war. And if you know Heracles' traditional labors, he's not often one of them. He's off in servitude to Queen Omphale, and he's about to come home with a prize maiden, a different wife, depending on which perspective you take on what's actually going on in this play. Now, the play just started with this famous proverb that you should never judge a mortal's life before it's over. And there may be something in this with the dating of the play, something in the water or air in Athens, because this is a famous line from Herodotus, the story he tells of King Croesus and Solon, and trying to figure out when you should count a person's life blessed. And the play continually returns to this idea of what it means to be happy or not, and returning to the idea that you should not count your blessings too soon. And for me, sort of trying to date the play has this theme at its center. Scholars have placed the play as early as the 450s or as late as during the Peloponnesian War in the early 420s. And to me, it's attractive to think of the play coming at a moment when the Athenians and their, as an audience, are really thinking about how fast fate can change. But let's turn back to Deianira. Deianira has been wed to Heracles, which we know from other stories is not the best thing that can happen to you. She has a child who we'll meet very soon, and Heracles has been gone. At the beginning of the play, he's not there, and his absence really counterweighs what happens with his presence near the end. After the scene you just saw, a nurse comes out. Deianira speaks to the nurse and Hyllus, and they continue to discuss Heracles' absence for years, how he's been a servant to Omphale. The chorus moves between lamenting Heracles' fate and identifying with Deianira's plight. It echoes the opening lines that Deianira gives us on the immobility of fate, saying that neither starry night nor the death spirits nor wealth remains for mortals, but delight and loss disappear and then each return again. Deianira returns to the stage and speaks about the sufferings of a woman before returning to her own specific ones. Heracles left a note, some sort of oracular message, saying that in a year and 3 months, he would either die or live a life free of pain afterwards. And this is that time. So we're sort of setting up the conflict of the play. A messenger arrives to inform her that Heracles is victorious and returning. And then we get our next scene.
We are happy in our return, and happy in your greeting, lady, in accordance with the deed achieved. For when a man has fair fortune, it is his right to win good welcome.
Most welcome, man. Tell me first what I would know. Shall I receive Heracles alive?
I certainly left him alive and well, in vigorous health, unburdened by disease.
Where? Tell me, in his ancestral land or on barbarian soil?
There is a headland of Euboea, where to Canaan Zeus he marks out altars and fruitful ground in tribute.
In payment of a vow or at the command of an oracle?
For a vow, made when he was seeking to conquer and plunder the country of these women you see before you.
And these? Who are they by the gods, and whose daughters? They deserve pity unless their misfortune deceives me.
These are captives, whom he selected as choice spoils for himself and for the gods when he sacked the city of Eurytus.
Was it, in fact, the war against the city which kept him away so long, beyond all forecast, past count of all days?
No. The greater part of the time he was detained in Lydia, no free man, as he declares, but sold into servitude. No offence should be taken at my tale, lady, when the deed is found to be Zeus's work. He passed a whole year, as he himself says, a bought slave to the barbarian Omphale. And so stung was he by the shame of it, that he bound himself by a solemn oath, swearing one day to enslave with wife and child the man who had brought that suffering upon him. And not in vain did he speak the oath. But when he had been purified, he gathered a mercenary army and went against the city of Eurytus. For Heracles asserted that that man alone of mortals had a share in cause his suffering. For when Heracles, a guest friend of long standing, came to his house and hearth, Eurytus roared against him with insults of ruinous intent, saying that although Heracles had inevitable shafts in his hands, he fell short of his own sons in the contest of the bow. Next, he shouted that Heracles was a free man's slave, a broken hulk, and then at a banquet, when his guest was full of wine, he tossed him from his home, furious at this treatment, when afterwards Iphitus came to the hill of Tyrrhens on the track of horses that had strayed. Heracles seized a moment when the man's eyes were one place and his thoughts another, and hurled him from a towering summit. But in anger at that deed, the king, the father of all, Olympian Zeus, sent him away to be sold. Did not tolerate that this once he killed a man by guile. Had he achieved his vengeance openly, Zeus would surely have pardoned him the righteous triumph, for the gods do not love criminal behavior either. So those men who gloried in bitter speech are themselves residents of Hades, all of them, and their city is enslaved. And the women whom you see fallen from happiness to misery are sent here to you. For that was your husband's command, which I, his faithful servant, perform. As for the man himself, know that he will come. Once he has made pure sacrifice to Zeus of his fathers for the sacking of the city. After all the good news that has been told, this indeed is the sweetest word to hear.
Now, O Queen, your joy is plainly revealed. Part is with you, and of the rest you have foreknowledge.
Yes. How would I not rejoice with dutiful spirit when I hear of my husband's successful venture? My rejoicing is bound to keep pace with his success. And yet a prudent mind can see room for fear, lest he who prospers should one day stumble. For a strange pity came over me, friends, at the sight of these ill-fated exiles, homeless and fatherless in a foreign land. They were once the daughters, perhaps, of freeborn men. Now they live the life of slaves. O Zeus, God who turns the tide of battle, may I never see you stalking against a child of my line on any occasion. No, if you do some such thing, let it not be while I'm still alive. So great is my fear as I look upon these girls. Unfortunate girl, who are you? Are you without a man? Or are you a mother? To judge by your appearance, you're untried in these roles, but someone of noble birth. Lichas, whose daughter is this stranger? Who is her mother? Who the father who begot her? Speak! I pity her more than all the rest when I look at her, inasmuch as she alone knows self-control.
Why would I know? Why would you ask me? Perhaps she is the offspring of not the lowest family in that land.
Can she be of the ruling family? Was she a child of Eurytus?
I do not know. I did not, in fact, make a long investigation.
And you do not know her name from one of her fellow captives?
No, indeed. In silence, I completed my task.
Unhappy girl, tell it to me anyway from your own mouth. It is indeed distressing to me not to know who you are.
It will not, I assure you, be at all on par with time past if she moves her lips. She has not said a word large or small, but has been constantly labouring with the heavy pains of her misfortune and weeping, poor girl, since she left her windswept fatherland. Her condition is indeed bad, for her anyway, but claims our forbearance.
Then let her be left in peace and go beneath our roof as it pleases her. Let her not, in addition to her existing troubles, take fresh grief from me. She has had enough already. Now let us all go in, so that you may go speedily on your journey while I make all things ready in the house.
Do go in, but first remain here a short while, so that you may learn apart from these others who they are whom you take into your home, and gain necessary knowledge of the facts which you have not heard. For these I am in full possession.
What do you mean? Why do you stay my departure?
Stop and listen. My former report was not a waste of your time, and neither, I believe, will this one be.
Shall I call those others back again? Or do you wish to speak before me and these women?
To you and the women I can speak freely. Never mind the others.
Oh, well, they're gone. Now let your speech signal your meaning.
That man, Lichas, spoke nothing of what he just told you in strict accordance with the truth. He was just now lying, or else he was dishonest in his earlier report.
What do you say? Explain to me clearly all that you mean, for I cannot understand what you said.
I heard this man declare, before many witnesses, that it was for the sake of this girl that Heracles overthrew Eurytus and the high towers of Iole. Eros alone of the gods enchanted him into doing these deeds of arms, not the toilsome servitude to Omphale in Lydia, nor to the death to which Ephetus was hurled. But now the herald has thrust Eros aside and tells a different tale. Well, when Heracles could not persuade him whose seed produced the child to give him his girl for his secret concubine, he devised some petty complaint as a pretext and made war upon her fatherland, which, as the herald said, that Eurytus ruled. He killed the king, her father, and sacked her city. And now, as you see, he makes her return, sending her to this house, not without consideration, lady, and not as if she were to be a slave. No, do not expect that. It is not likely if his heart has been kindled with desire. On this account, my queen, I am resolved to reveal to you all that I heard from that man. Many others were listening to it, as I was, in the public place where the Trachinians were assembled, so they can convict him. If my words are unwelcome, I am grieved, but nevertheless I have spoken the truth.
Ah, misery. What is happening to me? What secret plague have I welcomed beneath my roof? Ah, me. So she was born without a name, as her escort swore?
No. Illustrious by name as by birth. She is the daughter of Eurytus, and once called Iole, but he could say nothing of her birth because, of course, he made no investigation.
May destruction seize not all wrongdoers. No, only the man who practices stealthy wrongdoing that is shameful to his rank.
Oh, friends, what should I do? I am dumbstruck by this latest news.
Go and question Lichas, since he might tell the truth, if you were willing to compel him by threat of force to answer.
I will go. Your advice does not lack good judgment.
And I? Shall I wait here, or what do you require?
Stay here, since he is coming out of the house without my summons, but of his own accord.
My lady, what message shall I bear to Heracles? Instruct me, for you, as you see, I am going.
How quickly you rush away, when your arrival had been so tardy, before we've even resumed our talk.
Well, if there is anything you must ask, I am at your service.
Will you indeed give me the honest truth?
Yes. Be great Zeus my witness in anything that I know.
Who is the woman, then, whom you escorted here?
She is Euboean, but whose offspring I cannot say.
You there, look at me. To whom do you think you speak?
And you, to what end have you asked me such a question?
Dare to answer my question if you are sensible.
I speak to the royal Deianeira, daughter of Aeneas, wife of Heracles, and unless my eyes deceive me, my mistress.
The very word that I wish to hear from you. You admit that she is your mistress?
Yes, it is only right to do so.
Well then, what penalty would you think it right to pay if you should be found to be behaving wrongly toward her?
Wrongly? What fiction have you created?
None. Rather, it is you, to be sure, who do this.
I am leaving. I was foolish to listen to you so long.
No, not until you have answered a small question.
Speak, if you require something. You are not the silent type.
That captive, whom you escorted into the house, you know who I mean.
Yes. But why do you ask?
Did you not avow that she, on whom you look as if in ignorance, was Iole, the seed of Eurytus, your captive?
To whom on earth did I say it? Who and where is the man who heard me say it and will be your witness?
To many of our own citizens you said it. In the public gathering of Trachinians, a great crowd has heard this much, at least from you.
Sure, they said they heard, but it does not amount to the same thing to tell one's fancy and to give an accurate report.
What do you mean, fancy? Did you not speak on your oath when you said that you were bringing her as a bride for Heracles?
I, bringing a bride? In the name of gods, dear mistress, tell me who on earth this stranger is.
I am a man who heard from your own lips that the conquest of the whole city was due to desire for this girl, and that the Lydian woman did not destroy it, but the passion which arose for the girl.
Lady, send this creature away. To babble with the insane is not the mark of a sensible man.
No, I implore you by Zeus who strikes lightning down along the high glens of Eta, do not rob me of a true report. Your words will not fall on the ears of a cruel woman, nor has she yet to learn the fate of humanity, how by our nature we are often inconstant in our pleasures. He does not use good sense then, who like a boxer opposes the blows of Eros. For Eros rules the gods as he pleases, and he rules me as well, that is certain. Why not another woman just like me? And so I am crazed indeed if I blame my husband because that disease has seized him, or because he was seized by this woman, his partner, in a thing which is no shame to them and no wrong to me. Impossible. If it was from him that you learnt to lie, it was not a noble lesson. But if you are your own teacher in this, you will be seen as cruel when it is your wish to prove kind. No, tell me the whole truth, since to a freeborn man the name of liar attaches like an ugly stain. If your hope is to escape detection, that cannot come to pass. Many are those whom you told and who will inform me. And if you're afraid, your fear is mistaken, since it is not learning the truth that would pain me, but to know it. What is terrible in that? Is Heracles not all by himself already mated with a multitude of other women? And yet has one of them come away with a harsh word or reproach from me? Nor shall this girl, even if she should melt in her passion. Indeed, I felt a profound pity when I saw her, because her beauty has destroyed her life. And she, unfortunate one, has against her will devastated her fatherland and enslaved it. Well, those things must go with the wind. But as for you, I tell you, be dishonest to others, but always speak the truth to me.
Obey her good and kind advice, and hereafter you will neither have cause to complain of this lady, nor lack my thanks.
Indeed then, dear mistress, since I see that you think as mortals should think, and not without good judgment, I will tell you the whole truth and not hide it. Yes, it is just as this one says, that terrible longing for the girl long ago shot through Heracles, and for her sake the desolate Icalia, her father's land, was levelled by his spear. But he, I must say, what is in his favour. He never ordered me to conceal the fact and never denied it. Instead, I, lady, fearing to wound your heart by such news, erred, if you regard this in any way an error. Since, however, you know now the whole story, for his sake and for yours equally bear with the woman, bear with her, and be willing that the gentle words which you spoke about her have been spoken unalterably. For though by the strength of his hands he is victorious in all else, Heracles has been utterly subdued by his passion for this girl.
My own thoughts move me to act as you advise. Rest assured that I will not earn another affliction for myself by waging a fruitless fight against the gods. But let us go into the house, so that you may carry him my messages, and since gifts should be given in due recompense for gifts received, so that you may take these also. It would not be right that you should go back with empty hands after coming with such a rich cargo.
That's quite a big opening here. My name is Amy Pistone, and I'm, as Joel promised, going to try and make us all believe that this is a really wonderful play and not a deeply bizarre, strange one. And so, yeah, we have kind of this opening setup, and at this point we know most of the backstory, and we know where Heracles has been, and he isn't really going to show up until the second half of the play. And so we start by getting all of this kind of, we're talking about him, and we're telling lies about him, and we have prophecies about him, and we have, we've heard about him as a suitor, and we're really getting a lot of information about Heracles. And one of the reasons that this play is, whatever Wikipedia had to say about it, underdeveloped or something, it has not, until fairly recently, it has not been a very popular play for productions, performance. There are a lot, fairly recently, people have really taken this play up. But part of it is that it doesn't seem to map onto the rest of the types of Sophoclean heroes. This was a big issue that people had, we don't know what to make of who is the hero. Is there a hero of this play? And if so, what do we do with these kind of very conflicted characters? And so Deianira is our central character for the whole first half of this play. And one thing that really strikes me is how she's fundamentally so good and so reasonable. She isn't going to get mad at Heracles for bringing women back. She says, I've never gotten mad at the women that he slept with. She has actual pity for Iole. And we have kind of in the background all of these other women who have killed their husbands, right? We might, there's a line about even if she should melt in her passion, and it's hard not to think about Medea and the option that other women have taken to actually light people on fire. They're kind of rivals for their husband's affection, to actually kill them, to light them on fire. We might think about Clytemnestra and Cassandra, where we have a concubine coming back, and Clytemnestra takes violent action against her husband and against the concubine. And these aren't things that Deianira does, which I think is part of what makes her this deeply sympathetic character for me, that she isn't happy about what's happening, but she isn't going to take it out on Iole. She isn't going to take it out on this innocent victim, even though that's something that we do see so much in other instances in tragedy. And so kind of the setup of the play really, that's something that strikes me so much. What a deeply sympathetic depiction we have of Deianira. And the other thing I want to just highlight, because it's one of my favorite things about this play, is that we have this prophecy about, that Joel mentioned, that we have this prophecy about, this is the time when something's going to happen. We're at the moment, we have kind of this tension building of we're at the critical moment and something's going to happen here. Either Heracles is going to die, or he's going to have a life without trouble, a life free from toils, a life free from labor. And we get this people keep kind of repeating different versions of this prophecy throughout the play. All told, we'll get 4 to 5 versions of this prophecy told in different versions throughout the play. And so in the background, we have this prophecy that came from Zeus. Normally prophecies come from Apollo, but in this case, this came from Zeus. This was a oracle at Dodona, where Zeus tells the future. And so we have, this is Zeus giving prophecy, and we're reminded throughout the play that Zeus is Heracles' dad, right? So lest we forget that Zeus should have a particular interest in this hero because he's the father of Heracles. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that really jump out at me to help us as we segue into the next section. Joel, were there things you wanted to, I can fill in the gaps here, but I just wanted to give a little bit of framing for what we have going on at this point.
I think we can take it to a larger discussion later. You know, there's a small lacuna here between when Deianira leaves the stage and comes back, And we have the chorus sing there, right? And what does the chorus sing about that sort of takes us from one scene to another?
So I have a special vested interest in this part because so the chorus sings about the Heracles fighting her other suitor. So at the beginning, when Deianira mentions what if someone who was made of stronger stuff than I was, who could have watched this without shrinking, maybe they could tell you what happened exactly. And then we're going to hear exactly what happens. And we get this depiction of Aphrodite sitting as the umpire, as the referee of the match, which when I'm not doing Greek things, I officiate different sports. So I get very, very excited whenever there's references to someone officiating something. So Aphrodite is sitting in sort of judgment as these two men wrestle to see, to fight, to see who's going to marry Deianira. And so that is our intervening bit. And then we jump back into it.
Dear friends, while our guest is saying farewell to the captive girls in the house, I have stolen away. Partly to tell you what these hands have devised, and partly to grieve over my sufferings in your company. I have received a maiden, or I believe no longer a maiden but an experienced woman, into my home, just as a mariner takes on cargo and merchandise to wreck my peace of mind. And now we are two, a pair waiting under a single bedspread for one man's embrace. Such is the reward that Heracles has sent me, he whom I call true and loyal, for guarding his home through all that long time. I do not know how to be angry with him, even though he's infected with this disease. But then again, to live with her, sharing the same marriage, what woman could endure it? For I see that the flower of her youth is blooming, while mine is fading. The eyes of men love to pluck off the bloom of youth, but they turn their steps from the old. On this account, I am afraid lest Heracles, in name my husband, should be the younger woman's man. But as I said, anger brings shame to a woman of understanding. I will tell you, my friends, the way by which I will have deliverance and relief. I had a gift, an old one given to me by a monster of long ago, and kept it hidden in a bronze urn. While yet a girl, I took this gift from the shaggy-chested Nessus, from his lifeblood as he lay dying. He is the one who used to carry men in his arms for hire across the deep current of the Avenus, using no oar for conveyance nor ship's sail. He carried me too, on his shoulders, when at my father's sending I first departed with Heracles as his wife. When I was in midstream, he touched me with lewd hands. I shrieked, and straightway the son of Zeus turned round and with his hands shot a feathered arrow that whistled right through his chest to the lungs. As he passed away, the monster spoke these few words. Child of aged Nessus, you will have this benefit from my ferrying, if you obey me, since you were the last whom I carried. If you gather with your hands the blood clotted round my wound at the place where the Hydra, Lerna's monstrous growth, imbued the arrow with black gall, you will have a charm for the heart of Heracles, so that he will never look upon any woman and love her more than you. Remembering this charm, my friends, for after his death I had kept it carefully locked up in the house. I have imbued this robe with it, applying to it all that he instructed while he lived. The work is finished. May deeds of wicked daring always be far from my thoughts and from my knowledge, as I detest the woman who attempts them. But if in any way I may prevail against this girl by love spells and the charms used on Heracles, the means to that end have been devised, unless I seem to be acting rashly. If so, I will stop immediately.
So at that moment, the scene ends, and we move on to a large section of the play where the action goes into a slightly different direction. And I'd like to just return to what Amy said for a minute, with one of the reasons people neglect this play is the whole idea that there's not a main character or the main character is problematic. Amy, do you think that's a problem, or is this an Aristotle problem?
That is such a softball for me to blame something on Aristotle. No, but I think it really is that, Aristotle has a lot of things to say about tragedy. And I think they have really colored the way that we read tragedy we look for a tragic flaw, and we look for a lot of these sort of elements that Aristotle tells us should be in a good tragedy. And I think one of the things he doesn't like is a two-part plot, and he thinks it should be a uniform plot as opposed to two-plot thing. But there are undeniably some really great tragedies that, well, he might deny. I would say there are some that undeniably really great tragedies that have two parts. The Hippolytus, we know the Hippolytus, the version that we have was popular, it was successful. And it has two parts, right? Phaedra is the beginning, then she dies, and then the second half is about Hippolytus and Theseus. And so we have these plays that are kind of these diptych plays. And just because Aristotle doesn't like that, doesn't mean that they don't work as tragedies. And so I think I don't think it's a problem that we don't have a clear main character that we can say, like, this is our hero or what have you. It is, because I think I will grudgingly say that this is something that Aristotle might be correct about. It's not entirely about the characters, right? It's about kind of the story as a whole and the suffering and how everyone is reacting to and relating to the trauma that's happening in the play. And so the fact that it's not centering on one person, in fact, I think, and I think we see this in a lot of plays, tragedy is about the kind of dispersion of suffering, that it's not about one character had something bad happen to them, but it's about how that ripples out and how a community is affected. So when you think like Oedipus Tyrannus or something, like the whole city is suffering because of, yes, there's one man's tragedy, but the whole city is suffering as an effect of that. And I think that's something that tragedy reminds us of a lot, that suffering isn't confined to just one person, just one, a family, even though they tend to focus on these families. So it doesn't bother me at all that, this is a family's tragedy. And it's, I think one of the things that makes it so poignant as a tragedy is that no one does anything that's very wrong. And that, we could say that Heracles should know better than to bring Iole back, but it's not unusual. Like we would expect that would be what happens when you sack a city, is to bring people, concubines and enslaved people back. And so,
and we're also talking about a hero who allegedly impregnated 50 sisters in one night.
Right. And Deianira is like pretty okay. She's like, this isn't the first time he's slept with another woman. Like that doesn't seem to be the crux of her issue. And so there really isn't someone who did something bad in a way that I think makes it, I love a tragic plot where nobody did anything bad. It's just sometimes terrible things happen and there isn't a clear explanation for why. Like, I think that is the heart of a lot of these really powerful tragedies, is like, what should people have done differently? I mean, there were misunderstandings and miscommunications. That's kind of the most human thing to happen, is for people to talk past each other. And that's where the tragedy comes from in this play.
And I think that when we get to the end and sort of suspicion and the conversation we'll see in a bit between Heracles and his son, we see more of that. Before we turn though, you want to tell the story of what's going on with this poison, in case anybody participating or watching has no idea what's going on with, like, who's Nessus, what's his blood, why is it a love charm, what's going on here?
So this is such a fun, well, I should stop using words like fun and cool and great. But so the idea is that Nessus is a centaur, and he is ferrying Deianira across this river. And centaurs, one of the things that they are known for is being very lusty. So I think it describes as laying impure hands. He tries to assault, he tries to rape Deianira, and Heracles turns around and shoots him with his arrows. And his arrows are dipped in the poison of the Hydra, which makes them very, very lethal. And so he kills the centaur. And as the centaur is dying, he says, if you take the blood from right around my wound, this will be, and then the language that's used is really ambiguous. And this is one of the things that is operating throughout this play, is we see how slippery language can be, and how there are alternate meanings. And really that is where these kind of tragic misunderstandings come from. He says that you'll have, the wording changes, but a love potion, a charm, eventually he uses the word pharmacon, which kind of very famously has the meaning of both a cure, like drug is a good word for it, because it can be both a poison and a remedy. And so, but her language kind of shifts around as she's describing what goes on here. But he says that this will be a charm that will make sure that Heracles will never love any woman more than you. And so she goes, oh, perfect. It's a love charm. I will take this, and doesn't really question at the moment, up until the intervening lines that I'll describe in a minute. But she doesn't really question why a centaur who has just been killed by Heracles might want to help Heracles and or his bride. Goes, great. I will take the poison blood. What could go wrong? And so she decides that she's going to rub this blood on, and she gets instructions from the centaur about how to use it, which again is strange. And his explanation is, because you were the last person that I gave a ride across the river to, so I'll give you this magic gift. And as people outside the story, we are thinking we should be very skeptical of something that a centaur, not generally good guys in the first place, tells someone as he has just been killed by Heracles. And so anyway, she takes it and follows all the instructions. Don't expose it to the light, keep it somewhere safe, keep it nice and like warm, dry place. And so she rubs it on this robe, and she sends it back with Lichas to give to Heracles. And she thinks that she is going to win Heracles back. And there's a line in there where she talks about, like, I don't want to be like one of those. It feels like this nod to other tragic women. I don't want to be like one of those women. I don't want to be a Medea or a Clytemnestra. I just want him to love me the most. Yeah. So I don't want to share my marriage bed with this young girl, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to not want to do. And so then she sends this back with Lichas, and then she comes back out and she has kind of this moment of horror, and she talks to the chorus and she says, I think something very bad happened. Because the cotton that she'd used to apply she had like a cotton ball that she was using to apply the potion, it gets exposed to the sun and it burns up. And she goes, oh my God, I just put it all together. I don't think that the centaur was trying to help me. I think possibly the centaur had some ulterior motives here. But at this point, it's too late. And the robe with the potion has already been sent to Heracles. And so she says, well, I think I may have killed him, but I don't want to live with the shame of what I've done. So she goes and she kills herself inside. So she kind of goes off the stage. She kills herself with a sword, which the traditional female way of killing oneself is generally hanging. And so she kills herself with a sword, which is, we can talk about that, with sort of the masculine way of killing oneself. And then, but at this point also, so let me back up for a second. Before she does this, her son comes back and is yelling at her about how she's killed his dad. And she realizes everything that's happened. Her worst fears have been realized. And so then she goes and she kills herself, and Hyllus, her son, realizes that this was a misunderstanding. And so that is the majority of what has happened in the intervening lines. But we have this moment of, there were words and she thought she understood them, and then she realizes that maybe she didn't understand them as well as she thought. And that's going to be a big motif in the end section of this play, as we start to see Heracles has gotten a lot of words from his father and things that he thought he knew what they meant. And we're going to find out, we're going to kind of reevaluate a lot of different things that we thought we knew in the end part of this play. So I think that's most of what we need to have to head into the final section here.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, so there's more confusion going on, right? So Deianira has this issue with Nessus, as in most prophecies, you sort of read into them what you want to hear. So if you hear that he will never love another woman again, you're like, oh, that's good news. Well, he'll never love anything again because he's dead, right? But
Yes,
then Hyllus comes and he says to her, oh, he's struck, he's done, right? She's like, oh, he's dead. And then she kills herself, right? And then we find out, maybe to surprise, that he's not dead, right? So
Yeah.
the next scene we'll go to, father and son, which again is a little weird. And for those of you who haven't contemplated, it completely messes up with any sort of sensible timeline for Heracles' life you could imagine, right? That we have this full-grown son who's here. Maybe there's a time machine. I don't know. So Heracles is brought on stage. He's in terrible pain. You get back and forth between the chorus and Heracles and lament. And then Heracles speaks, and soon his son will be on stage.
Many and hot and cruel, not in name alone, have been the labours of these hands, the burdens hoisted upon these shoulders, and yet no toil ever laid on me by the bedfellow of Zeus, or by the hateful Eurystheus, was as harsh as this thing which the daughter of Oeneus, fair and false, has fastened upon my back, this woven net of the Erinuous in which I perish. Plastered to my sides, it has eaten away my inmost flesh and sucks the channels of my lungs, making my body its home. Already it has drunk away my fresh lifeblood, and my whole body is wasted, conquered by these indescribable bonds. Not spearmen on the battlefield, nor the giants' earth-born army, nor the might of savage beast, nor Hellas, nor the land of the barbarian, nor any land which I came to purify has ever done this to me. No, a woman, a weak woman, born not to the strength of man, all alone, has brought me down without a stroke of the sword. Son, show yourself my true-born son, and do not honor your mother's name above your father's. Bring out the woman that bore you, and give her with your own hands into my hand, that I may know for certain which sight grieves you more, my tortured frame or hers, when she suffers her just punishment. Go, my son, be bold. Show your pity for me, whom many might think deserving of pity. Pity me, moaning and weeping like a girl. No one could say that he has ever seen this man do that before. No, always without complaint, I used to pursue my troubles, but now in my misery I have been found a woman, instead of the man I used to be. Come close, stand near your father, and do examine the magnitude of the misfortune by which I suffer, for I will uncover my suffering. Look, see all of you the miserable body. See how wretched, how pitiable I am. Oh, misery. Oh, the ruinous spasm flames again. It shoots through my sides. I must wrestle once more with that cruel, devouring plague. King Hades, receive me. Strike me, O fire of Zeus. Hurl down your thunderbolt ruler. Dash it farther upon my head. Again the pest consumes me. It has blazed up, it has leapt to fury. O hands, my hands, O shoulders and chest and trusty arms, you are indeed those noted arms which once subdued with your might the dweller in Nemea, the scourge of herdsmen, the lion, a creature that no man might approach or confront. You tamed the Linnaean Hydra, and that monstrous army of beasts with double form, hostile, going on hoofed feet, violent, lawless of surpassing violence. You tamed the beast of Erymanthea, and underground the three-headed whelp of Hades, a restless terror, offspring of the fierce Echidna. You tamed the dragon and guarded the golden fruit in the farthest places of the earth. These toils and thousands more have I tasted, and no man has ever erected a trophy of victory over my hands. But now, with joints unhinged and with flesh torn to shreds, I have become a miserable spoil of an unseen destroyer. I, who am called the son of a noblest mother, I, who am reputed the seed of Zeus, Lord of the starry sky. But you may be sure of one thing. Though I am nothing, though I cannot move a step, yet she who has done this deed shall feel my heavy hand even so. Let her but come to me so that she may learn to proclaim this message to all the world, that in my death, as in my life, I punished the guilty.
Ah, unhappy Greece! What mourning do I foresee for her if she is cheated of this man?
Father, since your pause permits an answer, hear me. Diseased though you are, I will ask you for no more than is my due. Give yourself to me in a mood not as harsh as that to which your heart is now stung. Otherwise, you cannot learn in what circumstance you wrongly wish to triumph and wrongly show resentment.
Stop when you have said what it is you desire. In this pain of mine, I understand none of your many riddles.
I come to you to tell you of my father, my mother, her present circumstances, and how she erred unknowingly.
You corrupt thing. Have you indeed mentioned her name again, the name mother, murderess of father, in my hearing?
Yes, for her condition is such that my silence shames me.
No, it does not shame you when you consider her past crimes.
You will not say so, at least in view of her deeds today.
Speak, but take care that you not be found corrupt.
I will speak. She is just now dead. A new murder.
By whose hand? Your sinister words give a prophecy of wonder.
She did it by her own hand and no others.
Oh no, before she died by mine as she deserved.
Even your rage would be deflected if you would learn the whole of it.
Your tale begins strangely, but tell me what you mean.
The sum is this. She did wrong, but with good intent.
Did she do a good deed, corrupt traitor, when she killed your father?
No. Her plan was to apply a love charm for your heart when she saw your new marriage inside the house, but she missed her aim.
And what Trachinian is so potent a charmer?
Nessus, the centaur, persuaded her long ago to inflame your desire with such a potion.
Oh, misery, I am lost, ruined, ruined. The light of day exists no more for me. Now I understand the depth of my misfortune. Go, my son. Your father is no more. Summon for me all the crop of your brothers. Summon too poor Alcmena, in vain the bedfellow of Zeus, so that you may hear my final words, tell what oracles I know.
I cannot. Your mother is not here. It happens that she keeps her home in Tiryns by the sea. Some of your children she has taken to raise with her there, and others you will find are dwelling in Thebes. But we who are with you, Father, we will render at your command all service that is needed.
Here then, your task. You have come to where you will reveal what sort of a man you are who are called my son. It was foreshown to me by my father, far in the past, that I would perish by no creature that had the breath of life, but by one already dead, a dweller with Hades. So this savage centaur in death has killed me alive, just as the divine will had been foretold. And I will show you how later oracles tally with the first and testify to the old prophecy. I wrote them down for myself from the mouth of my father's oak of many tongues in the grove of the Selli, who dwell on the hills and sleep on the ground. The tree said that at the time which lives and now is, my release from the toils laid upon me would be accomplished, and I expected prosperous days. But the meaning, it seems, was only that I would die. For toil comes no more to the dead. Since then, my son, those words are clearly finding their fulfillment. You, on your part, must fight on my behalf. You must not delay, and so sharpen my tongue, but give your consent to work with me, like one who has discovered that best of laws, the law of obedience to your father.
Yes, Father. Though in coming to this point in our talk, I begin to have some fear, I will obey you in all your decrees.
First of all, put your right hand in mine.
With what purpose in mind do you so strongly urge this pledge on me?
Give your hand at once. Do not disobey me.
Here, I hold it out to you. Nothing will be denied you.
Now, swear by the head of Zeus, my begetter.
To do what deed? May this also be revealed.
To perform for me the task that I shall impose.
I swear it with Zeus for witness of the oath.
I pray that, if you break this oath, you may suffer.
I shall not suffer, since I will keep it. Yet so I pray.
Good. Then do you know the summit of Oeta, Zeus's sacred mountain?
I know it. I have often stood on that height to sacrifice.
Then you must carry my body there, after raising it up in your own hands, aided by as many of our friends as you require. And when you have cut many a branch from the deep-rooted oak and chopped down many a sturdy wild olive, you must lay my body on them, and with a flaming pine torch, burn it. And let no tear of mourning show itself there. No, do this without laments or tears, if you are indeed my son. But if you fail to do this, even from the world below, my curse and my wrath shall await you forever.
Father, what have you said? What have you done to me?
I have spoken that which you must perform. If you refuse, then get yourself some other father and be called my son no longer.
Oh, me. What deeds you call on me to do, Father, that I should become your murderer, polluted with your blood?
Not so, in truth, but healer of my sufferings, sole physician of my pain.
And how? By inflaming your body shall I heal it?
If your fear keeps you from this one task, at least perform the rest.
The service of carrying you will not be refused.
And the heaping of the pyre which I have ordered?
Yes, except that I will not touch fire to it with my own hands. All else will I do, and you will have no hindrance on my part.
Well, that much will be enough. Yet add one small favor to your large benefits.
Even if it is tremendously large, it will be done.
Do you know then the maiden daughter of Eurytus?
You mean Iole, I would guess?
You know her. Just this is the command that I impose upon you, my son. When I am dead, if you wish to know your piety by remembrance of your oath to your father, make this woman your wife, and do not disobey your father. Let no other but you take her who has lain close at my side. You, my son, make that marriage bond your own. Obey. For although you were obedient in great affairs, your disobedience in small ones cancels the gratitude already won.
Ah, me. It is wrong to be angry with a sick man, but who could bear to see him have thoughts like these?
Your words show no willingness to do as I say.
Who on earth would, when she alone is to blame for my mother's death and for your present condition? Besides, who would choose to do so unless he were infected by avenging fiends? It would be better, Father, that I also die rather than live united with those whom I most detest.
Man will render no due respect, it seems, to my dying prayer. No, be sure that the curse of gods will await you for disobeying my commands.
You will soon show, it seems, how diseased you are.
Yes, for you stir me from my slumbering plague.
I am miserable. I've no way out of so many dilemmas.
Yes, since you think it wrong to obey your begetter.
But must I then learn to be unholy, Father?
It is not unholy if you gladden my heart.
Do you then command me to do this as a clear duty?
I do, and I call upon the gods to bear me witness.
Then I will do it, and not refuse. Calling upon the gods to witness your deed, I can never be condemned for obeying you, Father.
Your words make a fair ending, and to them, my son, quickly add the gracious deed itself, so that you may place me on the pyre before my pain returns to tear or sting me. Come, make haste and lift me. This, in truth, is rest from troubles. This is the end, and the last end of Heracles.
Nothing hinders the fulfillment of your wish, since your commandment strongly compels me, Father.
Come then, before you awaken this plague. Oh, my hardened soul, give me a bit of steel to bind my lips like stone to stone. Stop any cry, since the task you accomplish, though by constraint, gives cause for joy.
Listen, attendants. Grant me ample forgiveness for this, but also recall the great cruelty of the gods in the deeds that are being done. They beget children and are hailed as fathers, and yet they can let such suffering pass before their eyes.
So that's pretty much the end of the play, except the chorus comes out and says, "No man foresees the future. The present is full of mourning for us and shame for the powers above, and indeed of hardship beyond compare for him who endures this disaster." So in a way, it takes us back to the beginning of the play. You can't know what's going to happen, except if you're Heracles, just bad things are going to happen. And I think going back to trying to make some sense of this play, I've got a big question for Amy to maybe bring the two parts together. So one of the interesting things that I usually talk about when I talk about Heracles in a myth class is his relationship with women in general, which is to say problematic, but it's also deeply symbolic. And that's that women represent for Heracles his tie to culture, to cities, and to communities. And they also represent the fact that in ancient Greek culture, men aged socially, right? There's no sign biologically that you're a man suddenly. So in ancient Greece, you don't become an omner, really. You don't become a man until you get married. And so there's this deep symbolic logic in the Greek world that you don't get old and die unless you marry a woman and have a child. And then in the sick logic or beautiful logic of myth, then being connected to women becomes causative for death. Right? So that's why, in a way, the Heracles story starts with him killing his wife, because he's sort of rejecting culture and society, and ends with another wife killing him. And what I find really interesting about what happens in this play is that Deianira is robbed of any type of agency. Right? So she says at several points in the play that, her beauty is killing her. Same thing for Iole. Her beauty is the thing that is killing her, and it becomes this externalized force, right? The women in this story have no control, and this really contrasts with those other figures you mentioned, Amy, who are Clytemnestra and Medea, right? I think we bring up these two women because they're powerful, they're memorable, and in a way they also seem to bookend Sophocles and his women. Right? Sophocles has his Antigone and her sister Ismene, and even Jocasta is interesting. And then we get to the character of Deianira. So I guess, Amy, comparing them to these other powerful women, could we say in a way that Sophocles is worse on women than Aeschylus and Euripides? I mean, she's just an object who gets to reflect on how pretty she is and how awful it is to be dumb.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, I have not thought of it quite in those terms of reflecting on how tough it is to be just a dumb woman here. Because I mean, I think there's something, like, yes, I mean, on some level, she misunderstands what's going on. And I actually think there's definitely something weird about the fact that it's because she does try and accept, like she does try and have some agency that ends up like it has outcome different than she thinks, but she actually thinks she's taking steps to not do bad things. And it kind of starts with her thinking that she can interpret this oracle from Zeus, right? And I really think this is one of the reasons I keep highlighting, even though some of the iterations of it were things that we skipped over in the reading. I think the fact that she reads this oracle as saying either he is going to die, and the play opens with him not dead, he's coming home. Therefore, we know that he's safe, and so it's going to be an end of his toils now. And that seems like those are the two options. And she thinks she understands what this means. Since he didn't die, he has an end to his toils now. He's done going away. He's done being out there and having all of these labors and conquest, all of the stuff that he's doing. And in light of that, I think it gives her the confidence to act, because she doesn't think he's going to die. He's not died. Now he's going to have a peaceful, happy life. So I think that motivates her to act. And it's kind of this sense of, here's what I want. Now that he's done being Heracles the hero, I want him to be my husband. I don't want, I want to form a family unit around him here. And so I think I read the fact that this goes terribly wrong, not entirely that she's so dumb and she can't read an oracle, but that it was never going to work, because Heracles isn't going to be like, that reality could never happen. And so there's sort of this awful drive towards something's going to go terribly wrong here, because Heracles isn't going to have a happy life. That's so fundamentally counter to who he is as a hero. If he's not out subjugating and being subjugated intermittently, then he's wreaking havoc at home. And so I think you have this way in which that same violence comes out in a different way. It's him directing violence at his first wife. And here we get kind of a subversion of that, which I think is really interesting. And the fact that it comes from her desire to sort of fiercely defend her home life is kind of what drives this whole thing. And so we get, when people are talking about like, oh, like the chorus and Heracles both mention like, oh, I get it now. The only rest from toils is death. I understand now. That was what this meant the whole time, that was the only rest from toils that I could have, because there is no life without suffering. And so, but we have this point where Deianira understands that she got it wrong. The chorus understands that they got it wrong. Heracles understands that he got it wrong. And I think it's really interesting that right in the middle of all this, we have Nessus, who is also fundamentally misunderstood, because we have these things that are almost like riddles. And that this play is so much about how do we make sense of words and language and meaning, and how do we have these meaningful discussions around things. And so, he'll never love any woman more than you. True, he's not going to be around to love anybody. He's going to have a rest from toils now. True, the only rest from toils is death, so he's going to die. And so I think that is such a central part of it that I guess I don't see it as being Deianira. I think she tries to act to exercise agency, and I don't think that it's, I don't know. I guess I don't find it to be as objectifying as a lot of plays where we have a woman who is kidnapped and this and that. Like she in fact accomplishes quite a lot of things, just not the things that she sets out to accomplish.
Okay, I mean, you convinced me there. So I think you had some questions for some of the actors that you're interested in.
I do. So one thing that I would really like to ask Tony and Minnie. So in an ancient performance, the two of you, your roles would be played, Deianira and Heracles would be played by the same actor, which I think adds this, and people debate all the time how much the audience would have noticed it was the same actor because you have masks on and they would have played with their voices. But I just wonder, for both of you sort of stepping inside of those roles, how you think about how that might change your depictions of the roles, or what it would be to be both sides of this sort of, the relationship, the violence, the death, what does that change at all how you think about your characters if you were to imagine being the other one as well?
Minnie and I went to drama school together, so we're fiddling around with the same roles. We were in the same drama school, so. But yeah,
the same person.
Go, Minnie, go.
I'm probably going to swerve away from your question a little, but you inspired me to say something, and everything you've been discussing up to now. It's so interesting. What you're saying, this play is kind of thrown up in terms of what people have perceived to be the problems. Some of my favourite plays have been labelled problem plays, and it really annoys me. But I'm mainly talking about Shakespeare. But I just really love it when it's kind of a red rag to a bull to me when somebody says that. As an actor, I guess our job is to fill the cup, come what may, and fall in love with it. But yeah, I find it really interesting that one of the problems that you've identified, people having kind of a beef with is the lack of a central character. And I was really surprised because I would say this, but I'm like, it's about Deianira, isn't it? And I find it really progressive, whatever that means, because who am I to judge? Ages gone by. But I find it progressive in that I perceive it quite clearly a female protagonist. Why someone would fight that, I'm kind of astounded. She is Hamlet, she's a person with a problem. Something's happened to her, a domestic thing, and she's coming to the audience and the chorus to say, what shall I do? And she's going through this period of sort of like, I'm at a loss. This has hit me hard. How do I respond? And it's really interesting knowing that it's played by the same actor, and how Heracles' reaction is all about, how could it be her who's brought me down? Like, how could it be a woman? And I just find that very interesting too, that, that in ages gone by, people have said, how can the woman be the protagonist? No, that can't be it. And then you get Heracles coming on and going, how come she's killed me? The only difference between her and Hamlet is she dies first, not last. Sorry. There we go.
What makes that comment especially powerful, to go along with Amy's framing as Clytemnestra Medea, is it's pretty clear that Clytemnestra is a bad woman, right? She's a bad lady, right? And from the Medea, although I think Euripides' Medea does have some good qualities, it's also pretty clear that she's kind of a bad actor. But Minnie, I really appreciate your words, because this woman, this main character, is not bad, right? She has tried to do the same thing Oedipus did, but without his arrogance and annoying character, right? Which is to try to solve her problems and to try to figure out how to navigate. So I'm wondering, Tony, when you played Heracles this time, because you gave us Heracles before, did you feel he had that much depth? Because one solution to the play, if we want to take Minnie's lead, is that the protagonist is in fact simply Deianira. And that only comes harder to us if Heracles is just less interesting and less deep.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether he seemed deep at all, but he seemed very much like a man, which was kind of like right on the head. He got completely the wrong end of the stick, reacted completely aggressively and overreacted, was your typical, was your atypical bloke? Was your typical bloke? Just going back very briefly to the original question, if it was the same actor playing both parts, which I think is an incredibly interesting journey for an actor to take, one of the things that occurred to me straight away was you try and be, I found myself many, many times in theatre shows trying to be the best advocate for my own character.
Mhm.
and see everything from their point of view. So you're okay with the Deianeira character because she's actually quite nice and actually is quite thinking about everyone. But as soon as you get to the Heracles side, that's really hard because you have then got to go against everything you've done practically in the first half. So I think it would be an incredible challenge for an actor to be able to switch so quickly and invest and be the best advocate for Heracles that you could be, because that's quite a hard call after you've been Deianeira, who is actually well thought out and has, thought her thoughts through pretty decently, to then switch suddenly to this, muscle-bound Neanderthal who, I mean, really, it's just, yeah. No, marry my young lover. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Perfectly normal stuff going on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely normal. So I want to move on to Anne, Mason, and Martin Lewis, who've been doing this for the first time. So Martin, we'll stick with you first. What did you think it was like to be Hyllus, right, as a character? And then what is it like acting in the bounds of the Zoom window?
Oh, well, I feel like Hyllus is in a very sticky situation. He's torn between his parents, this situation between one who has tried to harm the other, and now he is at this point of trying to convey not only the grievances but mistakes on his mother's end. But he's also trying to adhere to his father and listen to him in his last moments, and trying to be a dutiful son, while also being asked to do some really kind of reckless stuff. I mean, I've never in my life come across a situation where this woman who has gotten my father killed, I now need to marry and hold on to and live with, who is also one of the reasons why my mother's dead. It's complicated, obviously.
And I think we just sort of don't have any time to reflect on Hyllus's trauma, right? Like, he just saw his mother's corpse. His dad is disintegrating in front of him, and his dad is like, "Kill me, kill me." I mean, that's pretty deep.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine how someone could put that much weight on their how they can bear that much weight on their shoulders. And I feel like Hyllus is doing not a great job of it, but he's trying his best. What struck out to me is that he's trying to listen to his father. He's trying to honor him in these last moments, and that was his primary focus. I thought that was beautiful. But God, I mean, you're right. You're entirely right. I just saw my mother die, and now you're dying, and you're telling me to kill you, kill you further. Oh, okay.
Martin, just a quick follow-up on that for you. So there are a couple little lines at the end that we cut. And the very end, people debate whether the chorus, so Anne, this might have been your last line, or this might have been Martin's last line, but it's the final line is, "There's nothing here that isn't Zeus." And it's, when I've seen this play performed, they sort of Hyllus delivered it and kind of turns to the audience and said, there's nothing here that isn't Zeus. And it's such an interesting, because in addition to, we have the Martin and Tony father-son relationship, but we also have Heracles and Zeus. And so I think, there's so much there in terms of when that is our model of kind of like the uber father, as a son, what do you do looking at that? And the fact that potentially your last comment on all of this action and all of this trauma that you've gone through is, yep, this is Zeus. I think is just a really, it's such a gut punch of an end to just say, like, okay, that's where we leave it, huh?
Wow, that's absolutely beautiful. It kind of makes me think like Hyllus is resigning to the fact that the gods are willing to watch this suffering. They're willing to leave us to our devices and not intervene or potentially cause this suffering further. And then it also makes me think that like, this is what family looks like for me. These are the people I have: my grandfather, my father, and my mother. These are the kind of people they are. And this is what they're watching over. That's terrifying. Yeah.
Well, and this segues really nicely to a question that Lana just shared from YouTube about Heracles is deified after his death. And is there foreshadowing that future in the play? And one of the things that I think we sort of know as an audience that the pyre that he's going to is the pyre that he'll become apotheosized from there. Like he's going to go up to Olympus and be a god. But the play like does such a weird, it refuses to give you any of that consolation, right? It specifically doesn't mention that story, even though we kind of know it's in the background. There is no talk of Zeus told me I would be deified, or go put me on the pyre so I can become a god. The play, I think, doesn't offer that consolation, which is really telling.
So I think, and Amy and I were talking about this before, I think coming to that, there may be some reflection of Heraclean ritual in here. And that's this emphasis on you can't know if somebody is blessed, or you can't count yourself lucky until life is over. Now, one of the Greek words used for that in Solon and a couple of times in the play is olbios. It's a word sometimes translated as blessed or lucky. And in a hymn, we have two Heracles, the Homeric hymn to Heracles. The last line says, "Hail, Lord, son of Zeus, and give us virtue and blessing." And so I think there may be something in this play as centering Heracles in a position of suffering and in a position of not knowing that sort of makes him a reflection of the people who worship him. And I might even go so wild as to say Hyllus is in this position as the type of person who might even pray to Heracles. So he's a patron god of ephebs, of young men right on the verge of full adulthood, right? So his son there, you might even see him as being sort of ritualized or initiated into the most twisted adulthood ever. Watch your father die. This is literally a replacement, paternal replacement anxiety going on. And then marry his wife, right? But not in the bad way that Oedipus does, in a slightly less skeezy way. So reigning over all of this and viewing it as the chorus. And what was it like to be the chorus, which is usually such a big thing in a very small space?
Oh, it's fascinating. I mean, I think the chorus is always so interesting because they are the ones that bear witness to everything, and they're kind of the audience's way into the story, right? They're the ones that can be that liaison to the viewers. And I particularly love in plays like this one where the chorus is made up of women, because it makes me think of the roles of women in Greek society, in ancient Greek society as well, and what types of agency that they have. But to then distill all of that down into just this little screen that goes out over the internet is an interesting medium of doing so. But I mean, I've absolutely loved it. And this is not a play that I've read before. But I think it's really fascinating, especially in the ways that it looks at gender in this society, which I think having the women of Trachiniae being the chorus can compound on that as well. But Deianira wanting to have all of this agency, the act of her killing herself by a sword, by the means that would be more masculine, I think then takes a really interesting turn when it comes over to Heracles, and he says things like I have been found a woman inside this body of a man, or whatever that line is. I think that's just a fascinating aspect of this play to me in having the chorus of the women.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that's, I mean, there in so many plays, the choruses are these sort of powerful voices of marginalized people, right? And here it's an interesting dynamic to think about that group of women. Are they echoing the voices? And most of the time they are. They tell the story of marriages. They tell the stories, they sing to Aphrodite, right? They're really there with Deianira, and then things change a little bit. So as we're sort of rounding out to the end of our time, I want to check in with the actors who've worked on this before. Evvy and Tim, what was this play like compared to some of the others that you've been in on?
Amy has totally convinced me. I think it's fabulous. So thank you, Amy. I loved it. It was great. And it was lovely to The kind of division of these two halves of the play, I think, for me certainly, gave a really lovely opportunity to just watch the second half.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just brilliant. I loved it. Thank you. Nothing more interesting than that for me, I'm afraid.
It was fun playing the sort of two messengers together in the room, having the kind of the tussle. And actually, it just occurred to me, just as we were sort of going on, and in the middle of it, it sort of reminded me of kind of modern day politics and Lichas as this sort of spineless yes man who just telling lies, but just kind of loving the sound of his own voice and thinking he's doing the right thing, and then you've got this other sort of voice of reason coming in at him and saying, look, this guy's talking rubbish. And
so it's kind of like having a White House press secretary and the head of the infectious disease center.
Right.
Sorry, what did he just say?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking from the UK point of view, I was sort of thinking about our health secretary, Matt Hancock, kind of just talking utter crap all the time. But
So this week we had some help choosing scenes from Emma Pauly. Emma's here with us. Emma, could you just give us a few words on what sort of influenced the scenes that you selected?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I am very much in the Amy and Minnie camp, in that I very much view Deianira as our kind of central protagonist. I tried to choose cuttings that would really kind of center the narrative in her and center the narrative in this kind of domesticity and this real like sphere of the home that I think is so fascinating, that is this like wonderful, we don't get that a lot in tragedy, and it's really wonderful to see a protagonist who is so rooted in her home, and can't let down, can't leave out the death of Heracles, cannot leave out the pain and the suffering and the interactions with Hyllus. I was sad to lose the speeches about when she has the kind of tuft of wool that like burns up. I was definitely sad to lose those, and I was sad to lose a lot of the chorus, because I'm obsessed with the Aphrodite as umpire bit. This play has been a kind of stealth favorite of mine for a very long time, and I was really lucky to be able to hop on board for this. Yeah, no, my main motivation in these selections was to really kind of root us and our reading in Deianira and her pain, and like where pain lives in her decision making, and where trauma lives in her decision making. And I wanted to get across like the things that have happened in her life that have led her to this point. Like I wanted to make sure we talked about Nessus. I wanted to make sure we included a Kelois, this kind of series of bestial suitors that this woman has had, and this very kind of funhouse mirror Beauty and the Beast life that she's had. And to really root us and center us with her. So
I think you did a great job. You've convinced everybody here to take Amy's side, and Amy's gonna have to leave soon so we can close it out. But before, I don't want to leave Paul in silence. Paul, how was choosing for actors and scenes for this play different from some of the others we've looked at?
I was really fortunate to be able to get such a wonderful cast together. So I want to say a big thank you to all of them for doing such a brilliant job. And it is really interesting, isn't it, how it does sort of divide up a lot more. And as you were saying, Evvy, that you kind of then can kind of sit out a lot more and kind of see other things unfold. It's like sort of being an actor and sort of your character dies in Act 2. You're like, oh great, sort of, put your feet up and read the newspaper. But one of the things I sort of thought was really interesting about this was I thought how brilliantly that first speech worked within this setting, because there seems to be something so incredibly intimate about it, and something so personal, and that sort of just really laying bare something about yourself and kind of really sort of exposing yourself, which I think works brilliantly in such an intimate setting when you're just sort of, you're 20 centimeters away from the camera and everyone else is 20 centimeters away from viewing it as well. And I felt that was kind of really wonderful. And I think it really places sort of the attention on Deianira as a character as well. Like we as an audience can't help but be invested in this person when they're the first person who speaks to us, and speaks to us in such a sort of honest way as well, and such a kind of laying themselves bare way. And then the other one thing I just wanted to pick up was just to sort of pick up on what Amy said, and just as I was going through this, thinking, God, it's tough life, isn't it? Being sort of being in that position, or then you see the next and you go, well, I wouldn't like to be a messenger in this kind of scenario. No, I wouldn't like that. And then you go, I wouldn't want to be a hero. Now I've met Heracles. Who do I want to be within this? Life is tough. And actually, the idea of this misery or sort of difficulty kind of dispersing through society was kind of really kind of fascinating. And to see that happen across several characters was brilliant. And to see even still sort of at the end, Heracles like trying to hold on and sort of retain some control. Yeah. Sort of saying, if you don't do this, I'm gonna see you in the afterworld, young man. And it's like, guy, you're dying. Let go.
And maybe part of the answer is, after you go through all this and you see who you don't want to be, it may make the audience figure out that actually it's okay and kind of good to be who they are, right, at that moment. This may be part of the purpose of the play. I want to thank everybody today. All of you guys were really wonderful. Next week, we're going to continue with perverse family dramas. We're going to turn to Euripides' play Orestes, and we'll have Claire Catenaccio joining us. So thank you to everybody who made this possible. Keith DeStone, Ellen, Janet, Lana, who sets everything up. And I really appreciate that you make it possible. I hope everybody stays safe and sound and has a great week. Next week will be the same time, 3 p.m. or 8 in the UK, and different times across different time zones. All right, everybody take care.